Hello and welcome to Shattered Lives, Reach Ireland's crime podcast. I'm Paul Healy and I'm joined once again by Michael O'Toole. How are you, Michael?
I'm still in my car, Paul. Hello.
Hopefully you didn't stay there overnight.
No,
Yeah,
no, I did get a hotel, but I just would like to point out I actually do have a house. It's just I've been on the road a lot this week and it
well,
happens.
that's the nature of the job, isn't it? We've a lot to discuss, which is why we're doing a second podcast today. We want to talk about obviously the massive development in the McGregor case, but first we want to obviously go into, I suppose, the latest update down in Wexford and in Waterford. And you had been working on this case in relation to the death of a young girl, an 8-year-old girl. So there's been an update, Michael, and you were in court.
Yes, so this case is now sub judice, so we can't comment on it, we can't talk about it, but we can say what happened in court yesterday. There was a special sitting of Gorey District Court late on Wednesday evening, and it was in relation to the alleged murder of Malika Noor Al Khatib, sorry, in New Ross, at her home in New Ross on Sunday evening. Her father, Mohammed Shakir Al Tamimi, appeared in court on Wednesday evening charged with Malika's murder. He's also charged with the attempted murder of Malika's mother, Aisha Al Khatib. Now, the court heard he made no reply when the charges were put to him by Detective Garda Donald Doyle from the Euros Garda Station. And the district court does not have the power to deal with bail in a murder charge. So Mr. Al Tamimi was remanded in custody and he is due to appear again in Wexford District Court via video link on Monday afternoon, Monday morning, I think.
Interesting. You also are covering a very significant, another major drug seizure.
Yeah, we just wanted to mention this briefly. Paul knows that I collate all the drugs seizures this year. I'm a month behind because there's so many, and I have a wee spreadsheet. So up until the end of October, I calculated of customs and Gardaí at about 183 million. So there was another seizure today of 2.1 million by the Garda National Drugs and Organised Crime Bureau in Finglas and in Dunor in County Meath. They also got over €200,000 worth of cash in that. So I'm a month behind in tallying everything. I'll be very surprised if we don't get, or if the guards and customs don't get to about 200 million this year in drug
Wow.
seizures. That's a huge amount of money, huge amount of drugs.
I mean, yeah, that's significant. How does that compare with the previous year? Do we know? Or
Well, it was slightly skewed last year because you
Mm.
remember in September 2023 we had the MV Matthew, which was
Oh yes.
humongous. But
Mm.
I calculated it at the time. I think it was about, well, not including the MV Matthew, it was about 150 million. So the drug seizures in Ireland really have gone through the roof in the last couple of years.
Mm.
I've got obviously got some great information. They're dealing with their outside agencies and customs as well. So I always say, 200 million seized, is that 10% of what comes in? Is it 20%? I think everybody accepts that more drugs get into Ireland than are impounded by customs or Gardaí. But it just goes to show
Mm.
you how big the drugs trade in it is, all kinds. And by the way, as usual, the most popular drug in Ireland is cannabis. Everybody talks about heroin and ecstasy and cocaine. The
Okay.
biggest drug in Ireland is cannabis. Most of the
Mm.
drug seizures are always cannabis.
I mean, I'm just thinking of the massive announcement earlier this year, the encrypted chat hack, the latest hack, and I suppose the family being the primary target of that operation. Obviously, Gardaí in the Drugs and Organised Crime Bureau, I mean, they've been tapping into all of that in kind of encrypted chats and stuff, and obviously the intel has gotten much stronger. I mean, we can see that in the seizures.
Yeah, and I always say this, that we can talk about those encrypted phones. I always
Mm.
thought that Gardaí didn't use it as evidence because that would be challenged in court. They used it as what they would call
Intel.
confidential information, intel. And it
Mm.
seems to be working that, the guards, probably because we have a very robust constitution and people can't say, I want to know how this evidence that you have adduced was brought in. So I think they're probably playing the smart game of using it as what I would consider, or what I think my theory is, that they're using it, as you say, Paul, as intelligence. Something's happening. Either touts are touting or they're getting
Mhm.
access to phones, or maybe both.
Interesting. I think that's actually a subject matter we should just to promote it again. We're thinking of doing an end of year pod, and we'd happily talk about drug seizures. So if anyone wants to ask us more questions about that, should we get on to Conor McGregor? There's a lot to
Yes,
discuss.
I think this is very significant. We were expecting this. I personally thought the judge was going to reserve his judgment. So I was looking at it. Today's Thursday, so I was reading the tweets and stuff, and it said that the judge is going to make his decision in the afternoon. I went, Jesus, that was quick. So he didn't mess about. So what happened?
He certainly didn't. Well, just full disclosure, I wasn't there myself today, on a bit of leave at the moment, but our colleague Nicola Donnelly was covering it, and indeed it's well covered by RTE and other great reporters. The difference today was that Conor McGregor nor Nikita Hand did not need to be present in court and believe they weren't, but their legal counsel were. And this, as we mentioned in yesterday's pod, was in relation to costs in the case. And I think the major concern here, I suppose, on Nikita Hand's side of things was that she might end up having to pay James Lawrence's legal bills, which could have been hefty enough, and she could have seen herself having almost the damages that she was awarded nearly being wiped out, but that hasn't happened.
Could you explain to people like me who might not know why would she have to pay possibly Mr. Lawrence's fees, legal costs?
Well, so James Lawrence, quote unquote, won his case in a way, in a manner of speaking, although the judge kind of didn't really assert that today, and that's maybe not the right way of looking at it. But a jury at least has found him not liable for assault, so they found that he didn't assault Nikita Hand. So he had an argument which was made that Miss Hand should pay all of his legal bills for bringing the case against him. In effect, she had no choice to bring the case against him, as the court heard today, because he was saying he had sex with her and she was saying it didn't happen. So if his account was true, which he was saying it wasn't, then in effect he raped her. So she was kind of locked into having to take that legal case against him. Whether she liked it or not was her kind of legal side's way of arguing things. But yeah, I mean, his side were kind of trying to say, well, he's won his case, so he shouldn't have to foot the bill. She should, but that's not what the way that things have gone today. We were talking about this on air, just kind of before we went on air, the best way to explain this, and effectively, Miss Hand has won 3 out of 4 of her arguments today, in relation to costs. So the big headline of this is that Conor McGregor, who has been found liable for the assault of Miss Hand, the rape of Miss Hand, has been ordered to pay her entire legal costs, Nikita Hand's legal costs. So he will have to pay, and the numbers have been thrown around, but it's well in excess of 1.5 million euro worth of costs, Nikita Hand's costs and his own legal costs in the case. So a significant and hefty 6-figure sum.
So just to contextualize this, Paul, from what my understanding is, the only costs that Miss Hand now has to worry about or deal with are her own costs in relation to the James Lawrence case. Not James Lawrence's costs, but her own costs in relation to him.
Yeah, and we don't know what kind of arrangement, I suppose, she has in terms of her own legal team, and how much that it's significantly less anyway in terms of what it would have been had she had to cover her own costs and the costs in relation to James Lawrence and indeed Conor McGregor. So that's possibly the only thing she need really worry about. But I mean, we were talking about the possibility that if she had to pay all of those legal bills, that effectively the 248,000 euro that she'd been awarded by the jury would be wiped out, and even more so. I mean, this trial is obviously a very costly, expensive trial, and she will have legal bills, no doubt about it. I mean, she has had a professional legal team, for in effect 4 years trying to get this before the court. So we don't know what that bill is, and we don't know what her arrangements are with that team. But it's a significant financial victory for Miss Hand today. It could have been a completely different story.
And this might help explain things to people. Miss Hand has one legal team. Mr. Lawrence had a legal team. Mr. McGregor had a legal team. We know that Mr. McGregor told the court that he was paying Mr. Lawrence's legal fees. So that's that sorted. Mr. McGregor has to pay his own legal fees and Miss Hand's legal fees. So what I'm trying to explain is there's one legal team for Miss Hand, and they will get paid because they won the case against Conor McGregor,
Yes.
which is the big bulk of it. So really, it looks like from the outside that the legal team will get their costs. The Miss Hand's legal team will get their costs out of Mr. McGregor essentially, and then there's the
Yes.
small issue or the smaller issue of will they charge costs to Miss Hand for the Lawrence bit? Who knows?
Yeah, well, I just want to read out some of the reporting of what's been said in court, what was said in court today. And Mr. Justice Alexander Owens said that James Lawrence and Conor McGregor were acting in lockstep in their defence of their action. And he said, therefore, it would be inappropriate to award costs to James Lawrence, even though the jury found that he didn't rape Nikita Hand. He said that Mr. Lawrence was entirely successful in defending his claim, but these were not reasons, but not for reasons that he put forward himself in his own defence. He said the jury had concluded that James Lawrence didn't have consensual sex with Nikita Hand, and that this story that was told by McGregor and James Lawrence was concocted between the two of them. So that's the judge's finding. He also rejected an application by Nikita Hand's lawyers to have the costs awarded on a solicitor and client basis, which is the maximum possible level, which would mean that McGregor would have to pay all legal bills in its entirety. So he doesn't have to do that. And the judge said that that's something that has to be, considered sparingly, done sparingly. So in this case, McGregor is going to have to pay his own bills, Nikita Hand costs in relation to himself. And there's no ruling in relation to James Lawrence, but Nikita Hand may well end up having to pay her own bills in relation to the case she took against James Lawrence. So that's our kind of understanding of the legal jargon.
And I think one thing, no matter what, Conor
Yeah,
McGregor has got a huge legal bill here that would make
massive.
most people eyes water.
Well, I wonder, it's still pocket change to him. I mean, what is he worth? 130, 140 million, apparently. So, look, I mean, it's going to sting. Yeah. And again, it's more the reputational damage, isn't it? It's another knock, another blow for him. But look, that's not money that he doesn't have. Let's be honest. To anyone else, it would be a massive blow. But, it's more reputational damage. And as we heard today in court, well, as has been reported, Conor McGregor's not out of hot water yet. These social media posts that we referred to were brought up by Nikita Hand's counsel, and they're aggravating factors that may well find him being held in contempt of court. So that's something that Judge Owens said he's going to consider. These posts, he said, were highly irresponsible, and he said that he would have to consider whether or not there has been a contempt of court here in relation to posts. So people might remember that McGregor referred to the court as a kangaroo court and made rather disparaging remarks about the jury, the finding of the court. So that hasn't been looked at very well by the judge.
And just my reading of it, the judge has basically said he's considering a fine, is it?
Yeah, well, from what I see from the reporting, he said he may institute proceedings for contempt of court, and so he's reserved his decision in relation to that until the 16th of January. So McGregor may well find himself being fined for that. I suppose the higher penalty for contempt of court is imprisonment. I don't think that's going to happen in this case, but yeah, he may well find himself being slapped with another fine and being reprimanded by the judge for those posts, albeit they were deleted. But they were highly inappropriate posts and off the cuff, unhinged sort of remarks, I think.
Yes, and it's a lesson, isn't it? What do I always say? Measure twice, cut once. I tell you,
Well,
how many times have I, not on that level, but how many times have I composed angry tweets and went, oh, okay, let's think about this now.
don't do that.
Oh,
Well, one of the things that came up when we mentioned it yesterday, that this isn't so much or shouldn't so much be a massive blow to James Lawrence, although he was trying to argue that Nikita Hand should pay his bills. It came up today, and it had been mentioned during the trial, that throughout, Conor McGregor was actually paying James Lawrence's bill, that they were on the same legal team and those bills were being paid by McGregor. So I don't think James Lawrence is out of pocket here. McGregor is for James Lawrence's bills as well. So the only bill that, again, we think that Miss Hand might have to pay are her own personal bills to her legal team in relation to the case against James Lawrence, of which that could all be sorted as well. So
Yes,
yeah,
it's important to remember that Miss Hand's legal team will be getting paid out of the McGregor fees, which, look, from the outside, I'm not a barrister. From the outside, you would think that the bulk of the fees would be in relation to the McGregor aspect of the whole hearing, because that was very significant. That took up most of the trial, didn't it, really?
it did. I just sorry as you're talking to me, I found just the quote that the judge said in relation to these posts. And McGregor called it a kangaroo court, which the judge didn't look too kindly on. He said that McGregor is a very rich man and he could afford a fine for what he said was scandalizing the court. So it seems he's kind of already made up his mind that
Mm.
McGregor's posts are, scandalizing the court, as he put it. So, he hasn't looked on them too kindly.
Right. Okay. So, and I think, okay, when we spoke about this yesterday, there is obviously a significant financial aspect to this, but overall, it's reputation damage to Conor McGregor.
Massive. Now,
Mhm.
the court heard today that from his own barrister, Remy Farrell, that he is intending to launch an appeal in relation to the finding against him. He hasn't lodged that appeal yet, though. I don't know how that process works, but you could be talking well into next year before that's heard before any court. I don't know if that in the interim then holds up because there's no time limit imposed on when he has to pay that €248,000 to Miss Hand. So if he launches the appeal, I think he doesn't have to pay it then until that appeal is heard.
And you know what I think, Paul? Do you know when we cover criminal trials and people are convicted, this wasn't a criminal trial. I just want to say that again.
Mm,
Um, but you can only appeal on a point of law. So in other words, if somebody is convicted of a criminal thing, it's the judge made, erred in law and given the jury evidence or whatever. I wonder, is it the same in this aspect that it can't just be that Miss McGregor doesn't like it? The legal team will have to say, well, we think the jury shouldn't have heard this, or whatever. You know what I mean? I presume it has to be a point of law that the appeal will take place on.
Yeah, I don't know exactly how it works in a civil case. That's the straight answer is I don't
Mm.
know. I'm not I'm not familiar with the civil process as much as I would be the criminal process. But certainly, if you're launching an appeal in the criminal courts, yeah, you're right. You have to have a grounds for appeal
Mm.
on a point of law. Exactly. So I'm thinking of the Regency trial that Jason Bonney, for example, who's lodged an appeal. It's a very specific thing that he's lodged his appeal on the basis of giving a statement without being cautioned. So that's a very specific point of law, for example.
And it's a very big thing. And I'm only going to speak about criminal, but I remember
Mm,
always barristers always telling me it's a very big thing to overturn a jury verdict. So it has to be at a point of law because juries are
mm,
sacrosanct and they are paramount, really. So
mm.
you're right. We're probably talking over our toots, but you would imagine that it has to be in a point of law rather than I just don't like it or I just don't accept it. It has to be more than that.
Mm. And I think even some of the commentary about the judge today, I mean, you've now got a judge of the High Court suggesting that McGregor and James Lawrence concocted a story. That's all very powerful stuff,
Mm.
that'll have to be considered. I mean, and again, like we said yesterday, the evidence was very compelling and strong when you take the medical evidence in particular into account. So I don't know. I look, it'll be heard. I'd say I don't know on exactly what grounds, but uh, I just don't know if an appeal is going to be successful. I don't think it will be.
Okay. All right. So
But anyway.
we will let the appeal run its course, shall we? And we'll see what happens.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, look. At least it's over now, I suppose, for the Christmas period, and Miss Hand can finally rest and be at peace with matters. That's the end of legal matters. But it'll be back again in January, so we'll
I,
see.
I think my last point will be I think we can safely say today was a good day for Miss Hand and a bad day for Mr. McGregor.
Yeah, on a better day than expected, to be honest. I
Mm.
mean, yeah, I was concerned and that there was a fear that she may well have had to pay James Lawrence's costs as well as her own, and were that the case, I mean, effectively that €248,000 that she was awarded would be wiped out. So look, she has an opportunity, after this appeal by McGregor, to be awarded that sum. So listen, we'll leave it there because we've gone way over time. But thank you very much to everyone who continues to listen to us.
Yeah, and anybody has any questions, we'll answer what we can.
Yeah, DM us on Twitter, or you can also email us, paul.healy@reachplc.com and michael.o'toole@reachplc.com. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.